If you've been scrolling through endless soundbars, reading specs, watching YouTube unboxings, and still can't decide which one actually makes sense for your living room, this review is here to clear that up. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last few weeks setting up a few mid-range bars, listening to the same movie night twice, and comparing how each handles music, dialogue, and that inevitable boom from the subwoofer. The question I keep hearing from people is simple: will this thing really upgrade my movie nights, or am I just paying for a fancy logo? Let's dig into the Marshall Heston 120 and see if it lives up to the hype. First off, the Heston 120 is marketed as a 5.1.2 channel system, which sounds like a lot of numbers unless you know what they mean. In practice, that means the bar itself has left, center and right drivers, two upward-firing drivers for Dolby Atmos height effects, and a built-in subwoofer that tries to cover the low end. For a single-box solution, it's ambitious. The big selling point is the immersive claim: you should hear voices coming from the center, explosions lifting off the ceiling, and bass that you actually feel in the couch cushions. That's a step up from a plain stereo bar, but it also comes with a few trade-offs. Who should buy the Heston 120? If you have a medium-sized living room, say, 12 to 15 feet across, and you watch a lot of movies or binge-watch series with heavy dialogue, the bar's built-in subwoofer and Atmos drivers can make a noticeable difference. I tried it with a 55-inch 4K TV during a night of the Batman. The dialogue stayed clear even when the scene was filled with sirens and rain, and the occasional rooftop chase felt like it was happening above my head, thanks to those upward-firing drivers. The built-in sub gave a gentle rumble without the need for a separate speaker, which is handy if you're not ready to run speaker wires across the room. On the flip side, if you live in a small studio apartment, or if you mainly use your TV for news and YouTube, the extra height channels might feel like overkill. The bar's dimensions are fairly wide, and the front panel houses tactile knobs for volume, bass, and treble. Those knobs feel satisfying to turn, but they also add a little visual clutter. In a tight space, the bar can dominate the wall and may leave little room for a traditional soundbar placement. Also, the built-in subwoofer, while convenient, isn't as punchy as a dedicated external sub that you can place near a wall or corner. If you're an audiophile who demands deep, thudding bass for action movies, you might end up wishing for a separate unit. Connectivity is where the Heston 120 tries to stand out. It offers Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, HDMI ARC, and even RCA inputs for older gear. I paired it with my phone over Bluetooth and streamed a Spotify playlist without any noticeable latency, which is great for background music while cooking. The Wi-Fi connection lets you use the Marshall app to switch between sound modes: cinema, music, game, and a custom bass boost. In practice, the cinema mode emphasizes dialogue clarity and spreads ambient sounds, while music leans into the full frequency range, making pop songs sound richer. The app also lets you fine-tune the balance between the bar's drivers and the sub, something you don't get on many entry-level bars. One practical concern that shows up in real homes is remote friction. The Heston 120 comes with a tiny remote that only has volume, source selection, and a power button. There's no dedicated button for switching between HDMI, Bluetooth, or Wi-Fi. You have to dig into the menu using the remote's directional pad. For someone who wants a one-click movie mode, this can be annoying. I found myself using the Marshall app on my phone more often than the remote, simply because the app's interface is more intuitive and lets you see which input is active at a glance. Let's talk about the actual sound experience beyond the marketing language. The most common complaint with many soundbars is that voices get buried under music or effects. The Heston 120's center driver does a decent job keeping speech intelligible, even when the surrounding soundtrack is busy. When I watched a dialogue-heavy drama like The Crown, I didn't have to crank the volume to hear every line. The built-in sub, however, is modest. It delivers a pleasant thump for low-frequency effects, but it won't shake the room like a 10-inch powered sub in a home theater setup. In a larger room, you might notice a drop-off in bass impact during the climax of a film like Dune. For most users, that level of bass is sufficient, especially if you appreciate a cleaner, less boomy sound. The Atmos effect is where opinions will split. Because the upward drivers bounce sound off the ceiling, the height perception depends heavily on ceiling height and material. In my apartment with a 9-foot ceiling and acoustic tiles, the height cues were subtle. You could tell there was something above, but it didn't feel like a full